Hey, it's Mike. Thanks for tuning back in. It is Attic Find Friday, my favorite day of the week, and hopefully yours too. Today I've got a fun one. It is called the Fairy Godmother Find. It's a really cool story. Before I get into it though, I want to say that on the holiday or Christmas rack packs video yesterday, I was pretty surprised at the comments. A lot of people were very angrily telling me that they were repacks. I mean, did I not say that in the video? Maybe people just aren't watching and they're going in and yelling at me in the comments. I'm not really sure, but watch the video. And I guess if you're seeing this, it probably means you watched the video and you weren't yelling at me, so I don't know why I'm saying it. But Fairy Godmother Find happened in 2016. The protagonist in the story is Kevin. He keeps his last name private, but Kevin was a pharmacist in Massachusetts, and all throughout his childhood, his father's godmother, named Alice, would come and visit the family every Sunday, have dinner with them at Kevin's family house with his father. And in 1990, Alice passed away. When she passed away, Kevin and his father were the executors of her will, or Kevin's father was the executor of the will, and Kevin was helping his father, go through Alice's house. And in a closet, they found like house dresses and old coats, and underneath these items, they found old paper materials. There were some newspaper articles, some postcards, and an old manila envelope in a large hat box. And they took the manila envelope and they took it home to Kevin's house. So remember, this is 1990. And he put it in his closet. So about 5 years after he moved them into his house, he took them out and he noticed that there were some old baseball cards in the manila envelope. And he thought, he didn't know what they were, but Kevin ended up taking them to a card show. And he showed them to a dealer, and that dealer said, yeah, these are valuable. If you commit to selling them to me, if you commit to letting me sell them, let's have a conversation about it. And Kevin pressed him and said, how much do you think we can get for it? And the dealer said, probably $1,000. And Kevin looked up in the price guides. He was familiar with the prices. He knew that one of them by itself went for more than that, quite a bit more than that. And so he said, nope, I'm not going to do this. 10 years after that, he digs out his closet. He's got the cards still, hadn't really given them much thought. Kevin puts them in plastic sleeves, thinking maybe this will keep their value longer. He now at this point knows that they're valuable cards, doesn't know what he wants to do with them. He feels like they have sentimental value because his father's godmother, would that be grandmother, had given them to him. And it turns out her older brother, Arthur, had collected tobacco cards in the early 20th century. So you see where this story is going. It's where a lot of these stories go, which is to the T206 set. So when Kevin pulled these out again 10 years later, after putting them in sleeves, around 2016, he Googles baseball card dealer and finds Just Collect. So he emails Just Collect, and Leighton Sheldon, who is the owner of Just Collect, and you may recognize him from some stuff that happened around the National last year that he kind of became a little bit famous for. He also owns Vintage Breaks. So Leighton Sheldon reads the email and he's like, he's thinking, he's skeptical, just like all these old-time dealers are. But he looks at the images that Kevin attached to the email, and he said that his heart started racing immediately. So in it there were a dozen cards in the email with photographs. In the photos were two different Ty Cobbs in the T206 set, the Eddie Plank from the T206 set. We're going to talk a little bit about these in a minute. And then, so Leighton ended up driving out. He's in New Jersey. Kevin was in Massachusetts. So Leighton drives out to see Kevin, and he finds that there were 366 different T206 cards. So you've got the two Cobbs. There were actually three Ty Cobbs. The Eddie Plank. There were 3 Cy Young cards, 3 Christy Mathewson, 2 Walter Johnsons. There were 60 Hall of Famers in Kevin's collection from his father's godmother's older brother from a century before. More than a century had passed at this point. So 105, 106 years or so from 1910-ish to 2016. And some of them were in pretty decent shape. So the Eddie Plank was in very poor shape. Even the front of it looked bad, but the back of it had a lot of paper loss. It looked like maybe it had been glued into a binder 100 years before. Now, in the articles, Just Collect talks about how they were going to send these off to get graded. I couldn't find any evidence that they ended up getting graded. He said they were going to send them to PSA. There are some PSA authentic Eddie Planks and PSA 1 Eddie Planks, but none of them have sold via public auction. And Just Collect said that they were selling it via eBay. Now, PSA public auction results do include eBay results, but I don't know how far back that goes. So if that's a new thing that PSA connected to eBay results more recently than 2016, I don't know. I just find it odd that I can't find any grading results for any of these cards whatsoever. And I did a lot of searching. If you find it, let me know. If you can see, particularly the Eddie Plank I'm most interested in. I couldn't find it. So it's interesting that he said he was going to sell on eBay instead of going to an auction house. And all of the images I found are of these being ungraded. So I'm going to get comments here that these are not legitimate cards, that these are aged reprints or aged reproductions. That's perfectly legitimate. You can believe what you want. I'm skeptical, and we should always be skeptical of these stories. I think anytime these stories come out, they are designed to sell the cards. And I think that they're brilliant. It's marketing to create a story around the provenance of the cards or whatever it is that the collectible that they're trying to sell. So I'm curious what you think. I'm going to get into the set though. Just Collect, Leighton Sheldon valued the collection 7 years ago at about $50,000. This was before the boom, of course. This was before prices started going up. He ended up buying them from Kevin, and Kevin struggled with the selling option because they had sentimental value to him and to his family. But ultimately, he had a child he had to pay for college for, and so he sold them for tens of thousands of dollars. How many? I don't know how many tens of thousands. Leighton felt like the Plank itself was likely to sell for $25,000 or more. So that's half of what he had valued the collection at, which seems about right. So why is Eddie Plank so valuable over like Ty Cobb, Christy Mathewson, Cy Young, Walter Johnson? Because the Plank is super, super short printed. In the PSA Pop Report, there are only about 80. And that's only 2 times what the Hannes Wagner from the same set has. So if the Wagner only has roughly 40 in the PSA Pop Report, I'll give you a little comparison here. The Ty Cobb bat off shoulder, which he had on there, and he projected it to grade a 5 or a 6 from PSA, has 1,000 in the Pop Report, and the red portrait, which he had one of, which looked to me like a mid-grade Cobb red portrait, there were 2,000 of those in the Pop Report. So if there are only 80 of the Eddie Planks, this is one of maybe the second most rare card in baseball card history, if you exclude all the numbered cards in modern times, right? So the Eddie Plank, there are numerous theories about why the Plank is so rare. The most common theory, the most believed theory, is that the printing plate was damaged and there were so many that didn't pass through quality control and got thrown away. This is kind of validated by the fact that there are so many that are off-center, and there are just some issues with the card in general, the ones that got through. There's another theory that's pretty prominent that Plank like the theory of Hannes Wagner, was against putting his cards on tobacco cards, putting his face on tobacco cards and selling them. And he was known as a very clean, straight edge guy at the time. So it is possible. But I think you got to have a little bit of skepticism about any of these theories, really. Now, that non-tobacco issue theory, though, is semi-validated by the fact that he's not really in any other, or many other, tobacco cards of the time. He was in the 1913-14 Derby Cigars card, but that was a small regional release, so it's possible that they just didn't request permission, and he never knew about them, maybe. He was also only in one card, and other Hall of Famers, most other Hall of Famers, had 2, 3, even 4 cards in the T206 set. So it's interesting, and so I went and I looked at his career. He was well established by 1909. He already had 167 wins. He'd won 60% of his starts. He had a 2.49 ERA by that time. So it wasn't like he was new. Some other Hall of Famers who only had one card, Tris Speaker, Zach Wheat, they were just starting their careers. So it makes sense that they weren't yet as prominently featured as, say, Ty Cobb, who had many cards in the T206 set. Some other Hall of Famers were at the very end of their career, so weren't, they were at the tail end and just weren't as famous anymore. Maybe that's why they didn't get multiple cards. But Plank, very, very famous. Hall of Famer, 90-plus WAR for his career. Played most of his career for the Philadelphia A's. He had a 1.32 postseason ERA. He won 327 games in his career, which was the most by a left-hander in history for more than 50 years, until Warren Spahn took that record from him in the early 1960s. So yeah, Eddie Plank is a big deal. A PSA Authentic now sells for 6 figures. Back in the last one sold 2022 for just over $100,000. So probably not. It's probably not going to go for 6 figures today, but a little under. The last that sold publicly in a different grade, so a 1 or a 4, the only 2 that have sold publicly according to PSA's website, was sold in 2013. So no way to get a good barometer of how much those would sell for now. The Cobb Bat Off Shoulder PSA 5, which he had one of, went for $10,000 in 2020. Again, there are 1,000 of those, so that's why it's not as valuable. PSA 6 sold for $44,000 in 2022, so just last year. The Cobb Red Portrait PSA 3 sold for $8,000 in 2022. Again, there are 2,000 of those out there. Not in that grade, but 2,000 in the Pop Report total. All right, if you're new here, every Friday I do an Attic Find Friday with vintage or big-time collectibles. Click that subscribe button. I have no video tomorrow, which is Saturday, Sunday. I will be probably going to a card show in Portland, Maine, and then also doing a live stream for some giveaways. I've got a 1950 Bowman card. I've got a 1969 Bob Gibson, Randy Johnson, Donruss rookie from 1989, and some others. I'm going to surprise you. We'll do a live stream Sunday night, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. You have to be there to get some of the giveaways. Some of them I'll allow you to not be there, and everybody's eligible if you comment, subscribe, like on that video from Wednesday. So go back to that giveaway video. That's it. Let me know what you think about this collection. Is it legit? Should we be skeptical? I think we should be skeptical of all of these. Thanks very much for watching. Have a great weekend.